Joining me now are two brilliant legal minds, two of my favorite legal minds. Andrew Weissmann is the former general counsel at the FBI and a senior member of special counsel Robert Mueller's team. And Katie Phang is a former attorney and, of course, host of The Katie Phang Show here on MSNBC. So I want us to just start with the details here and the question a lot of people keep asking me. This is, of course, Andrew, an enormous judgment against the former president, $83 million. It's kind of an eye-popping number. Trump has said he's going to appeal. If he appeals, he still has to pay some portion. So give us the details here. How much and how long could this appeal process go?
Yeah, essentially, people are wondering, when will she see the money?
Yeah, exactly.
And so put it together with the other judgment, which was for $5 million. So you have $88 million that two separate juries, that is 18 jurors, unanimously concluded Donald Trump owes, because there is a victim here and it is not Donald Trump, for sexual assault of a very graphic nature against her will, and repeated defamation. Now, what the court does, because anybody, including Donald Trump, is entitled to due process, and that means he's entitled to appeal both verdicts. Anyone would be entitled to do that. However, during that period, what the court requires, and has already required with respect to the first judgment, and no doubt will require with respect to this judgment, is that the defendant post a bond. That is, that they have to put up the money or a bond that will make sure that the plaintiff is not left with nothing. In other words, if you want to be heard on appeal and take the time to be heard by another court as to whether legally it was done correctly, they won't review the facts, but legally they'll review it. The money is in the court, or a bond is in the court, to make sure that E. Jean Carroll, if the decisions are affirmed, has that pool of money to go after. And so I think people need to know, yes, she will have to wait, but there's no question that Judge Kaplan will make sure that there is that pool of money in the court, so that if she prevails on appeal, she is able to be paid in full.
That is good for people to hear. I think a relief for people to hear. Kate, I wanted to ask you, I alluded to this in my opening there, but, you know, it has been less than 48 hours, but Trump has not attacked E. Jean Carroll by name. Obviously, there are a lot of cases out there where he continues to attack not only potential jurors, but people in the legal system and the justice system. Should this give us any hope that the size of this judgment worked, or kind of from a legal perspective, what's your takeaway at this point?
Yeah, so the concept of a verdict, especially for somebody like E. Jean Carroll, it's kind of split in two. There's compensatory damages, the idea of making her whole, the idea of correcting the harm that was perpetrated by Donald Trump when he defamed her and said that she was a liar. But then there's the punitive damages, and the word punitive, it's supposed to punish. But punitive damages are also to serve as a deterrent, meaning it's supposed to keep people like Donald Trump and others from doing that conduct, that bad conduct that results in an $83.3 million judgment. 48 hours for Donald Trump is a lifetime. We all know that he only looks at directly what is in front of him. So it is a long period of time. But in some respects, it could show that because the amount was so high, it wasn't another 5 million, maybe another 6 million, because it was 65 million in punitive damages, that because it hits him where it hurts him the most, he's decided to maybe exercise some judgment. I don't want to give him too much credit, but maybe he's exercised some judgment and not wanting to do it. I think also what's happening too is it could come back to haunt him if he starts defaming other people. We've seen him look at limited gag orders, Jen, in other cases. We've seen him see that there's a legal prohibition against him speaking out in ways that are harmful. And so it's not like the judicial system is just standing by waiting for him to do something wrong. You see some proactivity there, but let me be clear. It is not prior restraint. It is not some type of abridgment of his First Amendment free speech rights. There's a reason why the laws exist, to make sure that people like Donald Trump stay in line.
It's really interesting to watch with the other cases you alluded to. We only have about a minute left. I wish we had more time. So, Andrew, let me ask you about something that struck me, which is the warning by Judge Kaplan to the jury that they not reveal they were part of this case. Of course, their names were not announced. We know it was 7 men, 2 women. That seems, well, obviously it's Trump, so of course he's going to go after them. But you've been in a lot of courtrooms. How uncommon, how unique is that kind of a warning?
Jen, the last time I was in a courtroom where a judge said that to a jury, Vincent Gigante, the former boss of the Genovese family, had been convicted. And the then chief judge of the Eastern District of New York told the jurors that they spoke as one body of jurors and they spoke in court. And he gave the same strong admonition that he said, while you are legally free to, his strong advice to them was not to speak individually to the press out of concern about retribution from Vincent Gigante and his ilk. It is remarkable that that same admonition was said with respect to somebody who was the president of the United States. Mm-hmm. That is the last time I heard that admonition being given.